Thank you very much, Paul. There's been mixed reaction to President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address last night, with many still asking the big question about where the details are of all these interventions that have been announced. Ramaphosa also announced a raft of interventions in an effort to deal with the electricity crisis, including declaring that national state of disaster. We speak to Economist and CEO at Pan-African Investment and Research Services, Dr. Iraj Abedian, for more on this. Dr. Abedian, thank you very much for your time. I want to start here for you, where exactly President Ramaphosa hit the right notes, and where do you think he fell short?
Thanks very much for inviting, and greetings to our viewers. I think the President was spot on in focusing on the interventions on energy generation. Definitely the right track for moving away from fixed ESCOM at all costs and so on, and instead put public resources into subsidizing households and families to go off-grid to reduce pressure on ESCOM. That's what should have been done 5 years ago, but that is definitely the right note. Where it becomes problematic is the way he wants to do it. He wants to, again, politicize what is purely a technical issue. I would have loved to see the President saying, this is the route we're going, get the best of our financing, asset financing, banking industry, get the best of our delivery of solar and alternative energy, put them in a room, come up with it within 2 weeks, and let them roll it out and report to the nation and report to the President. You don't need a minister to run around and reinvent the wheel and try to haggle and jaggle political issues. That's where I was disappointed, because he again puts layers of political, administrative load on what should be a purely technical implementation.
Do you think, Dr. Abedian, that there's going to be a lot of confusion about who is actually responsible for ESCOM? Because there's currently a lot of confusion and challenges about the Department of Public Enterprises and the Ministry of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, particularly since there's now a third player in there, and we haven't seen a lot of movement when it comes to unbundling ESCOM.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know that Minister Mboweni, many years back, said by the next April it will be done. Well, he has gone, another minister has come, and nothing has moved except expression of aspiration to do it, which is not what we need. Electricity doesn't need that type of problem solving. But be as it may, you create another minister of electricity, rest assured the cost will be on the nation. The cost of carrying a minister and his or her bodyguards and drivers and all of that. And what will he or she do? She'll start to navigate between Parveen Gordon and Gwede Mantash and ESCOM executives and ESCOM suppliers. So it will be another 6 months before this new minister decides what to do. And nobody better than President Ramaphosa is positioned to navigate that, because he's been at the war room of ESCOM for the past 10 years. So I think that is the disappointing part, and that's going to cost the economy again dearly and the society by procrastinating the solutions.
Dr. Abedian, something interesting as well when it comes to this new ministry is that the appointments that were made by the President in the previous State of the Nation address, such as Daniel Minele, who has left the Presidential Climate Finance Task Team after just a couple of months being announced in that previous SONA, and then there's Siponkosi's red tape team, which was billed as one that would unlock billions of investments. We haven't heard from them. These announcements that are being made without any actual plans seem to be a huge worry and has left a lot of people wanting in terms of what the President has presented.
you're absolutely spot on. We haven't even heard from what happened to Mr. Sifon Kosi. And all that it means that the president wants to be seen to be dealing with the issues. And he seemed to be under the impression that if he appoints another person in his office, the problem will go away. And all of these problems are technical issues. They are not really ideological or political issues. Yes, they have political support required, but they are not political by nature. Therefore, appointing another minister, another coordinator, another somebody, emissary of the president, has delivered almost nothing other than cost to the nation. And I think that's where one hopes that the president at some point will start taking charge and bring the ministers and those who are obstructing into the room and deal with them, sack them if they deserve it, or resolve their differences. And as a president, lead that, not leave it to another minister or another coordinator to do the job, and that they never do.
If you are an investor, and you're an investor yourself, what do you think, as an international investor listening to the president last night, what would come to mind? What would you make of the president's speech as you're sitting there with money to make your decisions with all these interventions that he mentioned?
I think that the impression that the president gives and has been fairly consistent in that, definitely his heart at the right place. He wants to serve the nation. He announces a new dawn in Tuma Mina. We get all excited. And the investors and the business community were very, very supportive and excited by his vision and his call to action. And yet, after announcing, he appears to just ignore it, forget it, until the next State of the Nation. And that is where the investment community at the moment is fairly exasperated by a president who is definitely intelligent, who understands the vision, who can motivate, and yet he cannot, after the speech, sit down and roll it out. And it comes across as somebody who gives the vision first and worries about implementation next, or leaves it to others to worry about, as opposed to sitting down with his team, with the trusted technical team, conceptualize the plan, get the timeline, get the budget, and then go out and motivate and inspire the nation and the investors. And that is where the investment community slowly is beginning to really discount his inspirational, fantastic delivery when it comes to nuts and bolts of the economy and requirements of the investment. Inspiration is only a necessary thing, is not sufficient. And the investors are getting very, very desperate almost.
Let's talk about the budget speech. In a couple of days' time, the finance minister, Kodongwana, is going to take to the podium to actually give some credence to some of these interventions, of course, and give more of the details. But when you look at South Africa's economic performance, we've heard from the IMF, which actually said that the country's GDP will grow by 1.2% for this year, compared with an estimated 2.6% in 2022, while the Reserve Bank has had it in their last estimation and forecast at 0.3%. What do you want to hear from the budget speech as the Minister of Finance takes to the podium on the 22nd of February?
Again, one would expect that the Minister of Finance would be a lot more business-like, less inspirational and more practical. Less sort of helicopter level and more ground level, your level and my level, so we can see what is the timeline. For example, let's start with Eskom. We've been talking about restructuring, and this particular Minister of Finance is on record to saying that he will deal with the 400 billion debt on the balance sheet, which, by the way, is every day getting more and more than 400 billion. Well, hopefully in the budget speech, he this time will not give us woolly promises, and he would give us rands and cents. How much the Treasury is going to do it, what are the conditions, what are the consequences, by what time. Even, again, last night the President says we will restructure the budget or consolidate the cabinet because it's got budgetary implications in 3 years' time. Well, that's what he told us 4 years ago in his first speech, that he's going to cut down the top-heavy cabinet. Never mind that he hasn't done that, he's increased it, bringing a new minister, a new this, a new that. All of that means on top of existing budgetary requirements, now there are more overhead expenses coming in. And the Minister of Finance has to hopefully at some point come and say, look, this economy, this tax base, this level of poverty and unemployment, this level of need for infrastructure investment cannot absorb overhead. We need to save every penny that we have to fix up our roads, to build our rail, to build our harbors, and et cetera, or now subsidize households and firms to generate their own electricity. We don't need another minister and another bag carrier, another bodyguard, and spend our scarce resources on those. So I think the Minister of Finance hopefully will begin to talk business, will put timeline and numbers, and not just promises and visions and inspirations.
Economist and CEO at Pan-African Investment and Research Services, Dr. Iraj Abedian. Sir, thank you very much for your time this evening.